Hello and welcome to Grocer Pod. My name's Sean Kosednar. You are hearing a piece of Grocer Pod history, as this is the first time a doctor has joined the show. Dr. Farhana Nusrat is an assistant professor at the Knauss School of Business at University of San Diego. Dr. Nusrat co-authored the study Feeling Rewarded and Entitled to be Served, Understanding the Influence of Self versus Regular Checkout on Customer Loyalty. I thought the topic, as well as the findings, would be of much interest to AWG members. But before we get to it, I want to remind you, please subscribe to Grocer Pod. Subscribing means new episodes will be downloaded for you each week. You can find Grocer Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform you use. Dr. Nusrat, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to talk about competing.
Yeah. So first, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your background and how you got studying grocery checkouts in the first place?
Yeah, so I have been doing a lot of research in consumer behavior and marketing as part of my job. And how I started this project was kind of me observing that a lot of stores started adding a lot of self-checkouts a few years ago, but then slowly a lot of them have been taking them down. And I was interested in understanding why that's been happening. And there are lots of news articles available where customers are kind of presenting their frustrations, what they don't like about self-checkout, which kind of tells us a little bit story why the stores might have discontinued them. So that's why I kind of started the project to dig even deeper to understand why customers would not like self-checkout.
Do you have any other background in grocery at all?
Not grocery in general.
That's cool. I'm glad that you dove into this then. So why'd you feel like this topic was important?
First of all, self-checkout, just installing so many self-checkout systems globally, not just in the US, was like millions of dollars worth of investment for all these stores. And what I thought might happen and what eventually I found in my studies is that customers are actually not feeling as loyal when they are using those self-checkouts. They don't feel that connection with the store, which actually just tells us that at the end of the day, that's not working, those millions of dollars of investment. So I feel like the stores knowing this information even before they start planning, designing the store, how they want to serve their customers would really benefit kind of both ways, both the customer's experience and the stores in general, and save them all those money.
I think that's great. So why don't you walk me through the study itself? How did it work?
Yeah. So in the study, we ran a few studies that were survey-based experiments, and then we also did a field study at the end. And in all of those studies, we tried to look at how customers behave differently, whether or not they're using a regular checkout with a cashier and all those interactions versus themselves doing everything at a self-checkout. And in our studies, we actually found that the customers mainly highlighted two very important things. The first one was the effort. So a lot of them expressed, in most of our studies, we ran multiple studies, and they expressed that we don't feel like it's our job to do all the bagging and packing and scanning of everything. That should be part of someone else's job. And I'm doing all this work, extra work, for which I'm not being compensated. And which reflects the same things I also saw in other news articles. And another thing we found was another thing that affects customers' decision was the entitlement to be served. So in grocery stores, a lot of people in our studies have mentioned that they actually like that interaction with the cashier. It's kind of part of a social interaction of the day. They like being served by someone, and they also like a human having that job versus a machine having that job. So it's also part of that, people wanting other people to have a job, and they feel like they deserve to be served when they're shopping at a grocery store or buying hundreds of dollars worth of groceries.
Which that makes sense when it's explained that way. Like, yeah, sure, I'm here. Like, these people are here. Like, they should bag my groceries for me, and that does make my job easier, and gives them a job as well. But you did find that there's a sort of give and take, and there is a way to get customers to feel like, oh, doing it yourself can be beneficial.
Yeah. So first of all, we actually found another thing as well about the number of items we buy. So we all know that if we're buying just two things, it doesn't really matter. At that point, customer really doesn't care about the service itself or even talking to someone at the cash register. But we found this number 15, which also we borrowed the number from literature in other research paper as well, that 15 is kind of the number of the regular grocery item that people buy on average. So if it's more than 15 or 15, we saw that all the defects actually come into play and they actually like to be served. But if it's less than 15, like 10 items, 8 items, they are actually fine with self-checkout. So that's also something like completely getting rid of self-checkout might not also be the best idea, just keeping it for some people who are buying less items. And in terms of rewards, we found that when we actually give the customers an idea that, hey, when you are doing it by yourself, it's actually a rewarding thing when you are accomplishing a task by yourself. So we actually, in our experiment, primed the customers by talking about something called an IKEA effect, which actually in psychology means when we build the IKEA furniture ourselves, we actually feel very accomplished about the whole cost. Hey, I built it myself. So if we can instill that idea in our customers' mind that you are getting everything done by yourself, it's a rewarding experience, that will help them with the whole experience. But in general, they would still prefer the regular checkout.
Were there any good ways of instilling that feeling in the customers? Like what should retailers do to instill that feeling in them before they get to the self-checkout?
In this case, I think one way should be providing them some kind of rewards too. So maybe when you are doing the self-checkout yourself, maybe you get a little bit of a discount at your total price. Or maybe we know that a lot of the times we now, at least in California, we have to pay for bags. So maybe at self-checkout, because you're doing all the work yourself, the bags are included. So I think that like tiny bit of reward, that's what my research is telling, will actually motivate them. And that might be very cost effective for the businesses too, because a little bit of discount versus hiring a lot more people, it might be cost effective to try.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly a balancing act because I totally get it. Having the self-checkout means that they don't have to hire somebody to work that, except for then when people don't know how to use the self-checkout, then someone has to come over and then they actually do need to have people over there. So it's definitely a balancing act by the retailers themselves. When it comes to consumer loyalty, like how was that measured in the study? What did that exactly mean?
For that, we actually used a scale that measured a few different things, like how rewarded you feel when you go to that store. How was your overall shopping experience? Do you want to come back to the store in the future? Are you going to recommend the store to your friends and family? And all of these items together kind of measured customer loyalty to the store for our participants. And that's how we kind of found that customers in the regular checkout condition actually reported that they are much more loyal to the store.
That's super impressive. Did wait time in the non-self checkout affect the results at all?
We did not get a chance to look at wait time to be very specific. So in that case, I think if the wait time is very long, that definitely will have some kind of impact. But if it's not that significant of a difference, like 2 to 3 minutes, in that case, the effects still should stay the same.
Awesome. What sort of effect should AWG member retailers, take from the results of this study? Like, how should they put this into action in their stores?
I would say that my recommendation would be trying to kind of do the math of how many self-checkout systems would be optimum for a particular location, depending on how many customers they're getting, and are they buying a lot of items. For example, a Walmart in a very big area, people are buying a lot of groceries, but maybe a 7-Eleven, it's only a few things. So depending on that, how many customers they have coming in, and if they can offer that little discount to their customers for doing the work themselves, they might be better off with less self-checkouts.
I think a reward system is just brilliant. That's nothing that I've heard discussed or ever really thought about before. But like so many stores have some sort of like loyalty system. You get points or what have you.
It
And
could
if
be
you
like
got
an extra point, maybe 2x points when you are scanning at the self-checkout counter. Because in our study, we actually just gave them the idea that, hey, think about the IKEA effect. This is how it's so like fulfilling, and that worked. So if that actually happens in real life, even if it's a tiny discount, tiny reward, I think it will have a big impact. And cost-wise, it's a great solution for everyone.
Exactly. That's awesome. Dr. Nusrat, I really appreciate you joining me today. Before I let you get out of here, I do like asking non-grocery people, what kind of grocery shopper are you?
Oh, I would like to get my groceries by myself, not Instacart or getting delivered. I like to see them and kind of do my own shopping. Yeah.
Are you, do you make a list, or are you just walking up and down the aisle and getting everything?
Walk up and down the aisle. Yeah, I can never stick to a list. So
No.
I usually let the grocery store tell me what I need.
Exactly. You're the best kind of customer. Again, thank you for joining me. That was brilliant insight, and I think I think all of our member retailers should probably check out your study. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Again, please like and subscribe to Grocer Pod so you can automatically hear all the latest things going on around AWG. And until next time, this has been Sean Kosednar for Grocer Pod.